the comedy of a 4-year-old. Anyway, welcome back to the podcast. I'll be your host today, Mr. The Guy. This is Steve. Steve's my skull. He's good at being a skull and not much else because he's dead. Hey, Mark, how's it going?
I'm pretty good, man. I'm just talking to Steve.
Yeah, you see, he's not really good at conversations. He's the champion at staring contests, which is kind of funny because he doesn't have any pupils. But he's a really good listener, and he's really good for like rainy nights, which is perfect for nights where like this, where it's freaking freezing outside, and you got coffee and stuff.
Definitely.
And we have adjacent black sweaters.
Hey, great minds think alike. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like to believe I have a great mind. So thank you very much.
Of course, my man.
Anyway, I haven't done podcasts in freaking weeks, and I'm angry about it. I'm angry. So I'm happy that we're doing this again. I'm happy that we're doing this in a cold night. That it's Christmas time. No one can see, but surrounding us right now is a bunch of poorly put together Christmas lights and a tree that I stole from a homeless person.
I didn't hear that part of the story, but it's definitely very Christmassy.
Yeah, I didn't actually do that second part, but you would never know, and there's no proof to back it up. So I do want to talk to you today about some film-related topics, because we just got done shooting a series of short films that we had planned out with a group of very great filmmakers. We provided this all by ourselves.
Yeah, out of pocket.
This is all out of pocket. This is all incentive-based. No one was getting paid. We all just wanted to do this.
Right.
And it did make me think of like the films that are out there right now who are self-funded, not by any big studio, not by anybody with like a humongous paycheck, but like for people who wanted to do the project, who really just need to do filmmaking. And I'm curious, what's your thought on this, because of how kind of our current system works now with a bunch of feature films, and how Marvel works and how Star Wars works. Not that there's anything wrong with those specific things, but that the kind of the standard now is to make or to spend a bajillion amount of money to make a movie. Like, for instance, Avatar, Avatar 2 that's coming out in theaters soon, needs to be the third highest grossing film of all time to even break even. Now, that's an extreme example, but so many of these movies have to spend so much money to get out into the public, and you don't really hear about these movies that are good, that are really solid, classy movies on the side that are just self-funded. And I'm not talking about A24 movies. That's a company in and of itself. They really fund their projects. They're not indie movies. Right. A24 isn't indie movies. Even like movies that are funded by a certain director, like a passion project, those are not indie movies. None of Quentin Tarantino's movies are really indie movies, except for maybe Reservoir Dogs.
Oh yeah,
but
Quentin Tarantino is too mainstream to be an indie movie.
Oh yeah, too mainstream. But those kinds of movies. What do you think is like the future for those types of movies? Because clearly they're really just kind of for filmmakers, if that makes sense, or like small town people.
Well, I mean, that's the way that. The one thing I want to say about that is, as you know, that's the only way people really get discovered, other than like either nepotism or being born in the industry.
Yeah.
Right. It's like through showcasing and just the right place, right time, and luck of you putting forth like this no budget film or very low budget thing, and hopefully it getting seen by someone that really has the capability to do something for you, right? And so that on one approach is always going to be there. Like that's never going to go away. But the future of like movie making, especially on low budget, I think it ties to so many topics. The big thing that is happening now is there's so many more avenues to showcase film now. Mm-hmm. I think, not only do we have all these streaming services and stuff like that, but now as social media, I think, tends to be more video focused, it warps what like a traditional film would be, being that a film is usually a longer format. And when I say long, longer than like 3 minutes, right? At least. But most social media, excluding YouTube, you would say is like, you're looking at seconds, if not maybe a couple minutes at most.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of compelling movies, if you would call them that, or short kind of film production things that are coming out because of these constraints and the democratization of attention, I would say. Mm-hmm. Because now that everybody has this platform to put things on that people can see, and because video is algorithmically based, that's the only way you're going to get a lot of attention and focus, is to conform to video more and more.
Yeah.
Is that more people are trying to become like amateur filmmakers in a way because of their social media content. Granted, they're kind of having to warp the creativity, because to get seen, you always have to conform to what is needed or what will be bought, right?
Yeah.
In everything, but I think now there's so many different avenues to showcase filmmaking that I think that is tying into what the future of filmmaking is, right? There's always an avenue for people to kind of pursue this route. Now, everything's going to be becoming so much more corporatized. So a lot of the freedom and the creativity is being cut down when you get into higher budget things. When you're on the low budget things, when you're on YouTube or social media, you have that freedom. You have such freedom. And I think that's where, we talked about when you have no budget creating something. I mean, that's where you can thrive. Yeah, you have that freedom when you have your own money. Like I was listening to a podcast. There are two comedians that I just love listening to, but one of them is Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer. Bert Kreischer. Is it? I love them both. Two Bears, One Cave. Two Bears, One Cave. Heck yeah. Love them both. Heck yeah. Bert Kreischer did a kind of a TV, not kind of a TV series, but something on Netflix called The Mountain or something like that. No, I remember this. I tried to watch the pilot. Yeah. It's kind of reality / narrative. It's a weird kind of format. Yeah. But he talked about loving doing that. I can't quite remember the exact name, but he said if he was to pitch it to Netflix again, there would be restrictions. Like, well, I don't know if the audience is still there. Would people be doing this? Whereas if you're doing what Tom Segura did with his TV show, you can just spend your own money and you have your own creativity. So it's kind of like the same thing with younger people or even like indie people who just want to create their own content. Yeah. With just their creativity. They're not pitching to a studio. They're not pitching to someone else like, will you make my stuff if I do this? No, you're entirely doing it self-funded. Yeah, and without those restrictions, obviously, you can swing for the fences, and your creativity isn't limited. Yeah, and that is where I think most attention goes because we as an audience, or at least me personally, I like unpredictability, right? I don't like to predict the ending. I want to know. I want to be surprised and engaged because I'm not able to predict it, but I also just want to follow this new story or seemingly new story. And I think you get most of those where creativity thrives. And so when you get all these small platforms that you don't necessarily have to have a lot of budget to do, but you retain all your creativity, I think that's why we get like people even like Tom Segura, Bert Kreischer, all these comedians, they're releasing all their specials and stuff on YouTube. Yeah. And it's because the democratization of attention now being that there's a lot of YouTubers now that are getting far more views than these high budget television series or networks. Oh, for sure. I mean, the attention span has done wonders for the amount of people who are just searching YouTube or just randomly find these things. Like those randomly found videos in the internet can have more of an impact on people than these big, giant blockbuster feature films. I mean, it's kind of unfortunate to say, but the old Hollywood days are gone, and we have reached the new Hollywood days where films like Top Gun Maverick are great theater experiences, but maybe don't leave as much of an impact as if they would back in the day, if that makes sense. Because films used to be kind of more like an event. Right. Like you get dressed up, it's nice. And they still are an event to a degree, but it's not the same. Not the same. It's just a shame. I think it's just the evolution of things. And I agree with it. Whether it's a shame or not, and I tend to agree it is kind of a shame. But I would say that like it's not as frequent that there's a lot of cultural impact that films have now. Like Top Gun Maverick is like every now and then. It's not as frequent. Whereas you get these almost no budget YouTube videos and like a creator can put something out and with regularity, and because of the attention that they can garner, those videos can have much more with frequency a cultural impact than these massive budget films and TV series and things like that. And but also, as a side note, I think because the frequency is increased with the amount of content and things like that from these videos on YouTube and stuff like that, and just videos in general that have so much focus, I think that the influence is not as long-lasting. I think we have the ability to kind of forget very quickly. Like our attention span, it's like Top Gun Maverick was great, but then like within 3 weeks you already lost that, and like when someone brings it up, it's like, oh yeah, but it's not like on the top of your mind. Whereas
it's not.
You shoot back to like 20 years ago, even Titanic, when that came out for 6 months, it was like
Mm-hmm.
a global phenomenon. People were talking about that forever.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones, Star Wars was even big for years. People talked about it. I think the last one that you would say is, other than Titanic, was maybe Lord of the Rings, that still has such a, or Harry Potter. Those have such a
Yeah,
global...
really, the last Harry Potter movie, dude. I remember like that was one of the biggest things that I got to go see in the theaters when I was a kid. I mean, the thing that Revenge of the Sith came out when I was a kid, but I wasn't allowed to go see it because it was PG-13, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
But I got to go see the last Harry Potter in theaters, and that was like a huge cultural thing. Nothing that really happened since then. Except for like The Force Awakens when that came out, because that was like the first Star Wars movie in years, and this was the last Harry Potter movie. And like I remember there was this absolute turd of a woman and her entire family who just like rushed my entire family.
Karen.
I freaking hated those people so much because they were like rushing us because we didn't have assigned seating. You just had to get your seats, and they didn't want to do like the polite way of like understanding that these people are in front and they got here before you.
Yeah.
So like, wait, no, these people just rushed in front of us, and like I've never wanted to see someone faceplant and break their face more than just this woman. It's just I don't like you, but.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's not that cultural impact that film used to have, and definitely that might just be due to the fact that it's different times and attention spans are definitely not there anymore.
Yeah.
But for shorter content. But I wonder if it's short film, specifically short film related.
Yes.
Someone that's specifically wanting to be a filmmaker, director, cinematographer, whoever, or maybe just an actor, and you make a short film like that. What kind of impact do you think that has nowadays? Because it kind of used to be like Ari Aster, who did Hereditary and Midsummer. He did short films back then. The guy who directed Shazam and Lights Out, he did a short film. Lights Out, he did the Lights Out short film that made that into a feature film. Is there any future for those kinds of short films, do you think?
Are you saying that like the short films that act as kind of the launching pad for an art? Because I think Damien Chazelle on that point, he did the short film version of Whiplash, and then got his launch pad. I mean, it's the same thing with, I think Christopher Nolan did a short film or a feature film with no budget, and that got him noticed.
Yeah, he did.
So like a lot of these, unless you have someone that you're known in the business, I still think they're launching pads. I guess as far as a filmmaker goes, there is a reason why you should do your craft, is obviously not only to get better at it and stuff like that, as you would probably say, but like I would say from my perspective, it's like, well, that's the only way you're going to be able to get the funding to keep doing it. Because at these, the more places that you can showcase it, the more people you can see, the more clout you can get. Clout can translate to you getting investors involved. Investors give you better budgets. You can shoot longer films with as high a quality, or you can just get even more exposure with that in new investment. And then if you get a big enough investment, then maybe you can shoot something you can show off and pitch to studios and things like that. So I still think that is like, that is the best thing for shorts are always a launching pad, right? And it's also an ability, because of the democratization of attention, you have all these platforms that you can put that film on that you really can influence a lot. So like there's a lot of political stuff around the world that I don't think would be noticed without people doing short films about and bringing attention to, whether they be political unrest in a certain area or the plight of some certain demographic group.
Those short films tend to get a little more attention for the political kind.
They do, and I would say that like if you're looking at documentarian, that stuff, definitely will get a lot more. But as far as narrative structure, I still think that is probably, and maybe you would agree that that's probably the best way to kind of launch yourself as well as hone your craft. Yeah. Because like art is one of those things you have to do to get better at it.
You have to get better at it. Short films are 100% the
right way. And it's that practical application. You just have to do it because you can sit and you can listen to someone talk to you about it forever, but until you put your you put your hand in the fire and actually try it, are you really going to learn that much stuff? You might think you're retaining information, but that's all you're really doing is retaining information versus actually the experience is branding you with that information you're learning from it.
Be like that guy on the internet. What's the guy who's like doing some nonsense with his hands, like get off your ass and go to the gym.
Do it. Just
do it. Oh my gosh, that freaking guy. That guy's something else. You know what? A long time ago, I did this short film called The Porcelains.
Yes.
And we actually, thank you. We actually had, I don't know if he was a studio executive or someone else, but he was talking to someone else about creating a feature film or a TV series. And I guess Noah or someone else had talked to him about talking about us porcelains, because we were thinking that at the time we could turn this into a feature film, and he was talking to us about the things that we could add to it, because he just watched it and he's having us in the room. Like, okay, here are the things you can add. It's probably gonna be rated R. There needs to be more blood. There needs to be more sex. And like, hold on, wait, what? it's like adding all these things that I'm sure as a producer, like in his mind, he's thinking like, what's gonna sell this movie?
Yeah, that's the producer's job, right?
Yeah. And in my mind, like it's definitely taking away from like there's a practical application, sure, but it's taking away from the creativity of my end. What if I don't want to do these things? What if I have no desire to do them? But on the other end, like it's a practical application. He knows what sells and he knows what gives an audience the desire to go out and freaking see your stuff, and those are the things that are going to entice you as an audience member to go out and see your crap. So that I get that. I get that side of like short films, like building that business side, not only just in experience for you, but also like this is what could be as a feature film. You want to try this out? Some is like pitching it to an executive or stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. In my mind, so many filmmakers see people like the guy who directed Shazam. I will remember your name eventually. I just don't right now. But see the fact that he did a short film, and then studio executives saw that and like, crap, let's make this into a feature film. Yeah. And the fact that that's such a 1 in a billion thing to happen. It is.
And unfortunately, I think we brought this up in the past podcast I was on with you, which I'm still grateful for you having me on again. But
yeah, you're fun to talk to.
Hell, man, likewise, brother. And so
I like to bring people in who are smarter than me.
Oh, whatever, man. I feel like I'm in great company with you. So I would say though that it's, and you would probably echo this statement, but I think anybody that knows that has been working in entertainment for a while understands that it is. Although it is a widespread community, it is a really small community when you get to the people that actually are working consistently.
Oh, and my gosh.
You really there is a factor of like you being around for a long time, whereas you've gained some familiarity with at least a few of those people, and so then you can be chosen, because at the end of the day, you have to be chosen. And in this, as from an acting perspective. From my perspective as an actor, I mean, at the end of the day, I might nail something in like the audition. I'm gonna be like, in my eyes, perfect for the part because like I'm hitting all the notes that the casting director wants, if that's the case. But there could be a factor of like I'm just not like this other person, fits aesthetically what they're looking for just a little bit better.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Or they've already cast somebody else, and even though like I fit it aesthetically, I don't fit it aesthetically as this other person against that other person.
Yeah.
So there's so many other factors. And it goes down to probably directors as well. Like if the studio had already worked with that director previously, and there's politics involved. And if there's another studio that wants that director, like, and then it comes down to like what can be offered to that director. Yeah. They also don't want to like it. There's also like behind closed doors. I know there's things of like, there's trading among schedules when films are released. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well, we want this guy right now, but if we can't have him, will you give us this guy? Because like it's almost like your football drafting at certain time, because there's so many moving parts for when there's so many factors, marketing, when the film's going to be released, like, what politically is going on in the world, what actor's hot right now, what's going on, what director's going on right now.
Yeah, like you wouldn't cast Amber Heard right now.
Yeah, exactly. That would, because the Johnny Depp trial just came on right now, for sure. And there's so many things that go on. At the end of the day, it's you will go nuts thinking about that stuff, and take it from somebody who has gone nuts thinking about that stuff, because it's very easy to wallow and think like, oh, how come I'm not getting work right now? I'm just as good as this person or that person. And that is just a way to your own psychological demise. I think that like you can only have, only trust in what you can control and focus on that, and really be determined to make that the best you possibly can, because that's the only thing that you can, control what the output that you put in. So if you can do that, and then you control if you're prepared or not for the opportunity, and then like, trust that. Unfortunately, it's all about, at the end of the day, if you don't have an opportunity, create the opportunity in the sense that always be working, whether you have like a huge budget or no budget. You know what I mean? Just constantly be putting out work.
Yeah.
That's my advice. And then trust that because you've been working on the stuff that you can control, and been putting your best effort forward, when you get that opportunity, you know that what you're putting out is of a quality that you like, you respect within yourself. And so, then you don't have in your head, man, I should have done better. No, you can relax that, I did what was capable. And if they didn't choose me, there obviously was a reason outside my control.
Yeah.
And so then you can actually rest easy about it. Because otherwise,
it's going to eat you up.
It's 100%. So that's what I would say about that.
That's it's a really healthy mindset to have that,
because it took a long time to get here, my friend.
It took so long.
Yeah, because everybody in entertainment will probably echo this, that it is torture. Like, acting sucks. This is great. Not acting sucks. I love acting. Acting is awesome. But auditioning sucks. Excuse me. So auditioning sucks. And I think it sucks for everybody. The casting director hopes. They're praying for you to come in and do good, because they want to find the person as fast as possible that they possibly can, because it makes their job so much easier. And, because their job's on the line for them to find this person, you know what I mean? The director wants the best people to work with, so they're trying to get that. The producer wants, everything to go right. So everybody's praying for all these things to fall in line. So the auditioning, casting, getting things prepped to just do a film is a miracle. And then the whole other thing is, like, to get a film funded is a miracle. I mean, there's so many things that go in. I know I'm going on this tangent, but I would say that just the audition experience is just a tough one. And so, it's being out there and just...
I don't know how you freaking do that. How you just go into the casting process and just... I don't know, try and prove yourself to this one person.
Well, I would imagine it's the same. I appreciate you saying that, but it's the same thing. I would look at you for any project. You know what I mean? Especially when you're getting up there, when it's a bigger film that actually has say if it only has $50,000 or $100,000, which is a super low budget film, really, in perspective of everything. But you're probably competing with several other people to try to get the favor in order for that financier to say okay for you to have the job as being the DP or the director or whatever. It's the same thing. I think screenwriting is it's as difficult or more, because you spend hours, if not months, on a script. You pour your heart and soul in the script, and you're trying to get it seen by somebody. And there's countless stories of you putting it into film, like Rick will tell you, putting into film festivals or something like that. Maybe your idea gets stolen. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that happens every now and then. You hear horror stories about that. Or, just nothing comes of it. And you sat there, you poured your heart and soul. You know this is good. But
and no one budged on this.
No one budged. Or better yet, and this has happened to a friend of mine. Like, you get your story. People love the story. People love the script. And they buy it to just shelve it, because either it can't be funded or it's too similar to something else that's coming out and they don't want competition to have it. So they just buy it and shelve it for good.
It's always funny to me to look at filmmakers now who have made it and talk about some things that give younger filmmakers a different idea. And what I mean by that is, Quentin Tarantino can say all day to make your story the way you want to make it and do whatever you want to. You can do that 100%, but you can do that. Quentin Tarantino can do that. Christopher Nolan can make whatever film he wants because he's Christopher Nolan. I, Jacob Sizemore, someone that no one's heard of, can't do that. I can make the movies that I want and I can fund them myself, but if I'm going to a studio and saying, we have, in my mind, a great idea, they're not going to do anything.
Right.
Because I don't have a name for myself. I have nothing to back me up, and I guess it gives some younger filmmakers the idea that you can do anything with you want, but realistically, you have to have an understanding of how everything works. How, you were talking about, the political side of works, of how we need this type of actor. You need a well-known actor in your project to at least get some eyes moving towards your project. You have this actor in your project. Well, that means you're classy or whatever. it's never going to be 100% your creativity unless you have some kind of a name for yourself or unless you're self-funding it.
Right. I think you hit it on. I mean, you brought this up a little bit earlier, and I love that you circled back to it. I think you're hitting on the complexity of the situation, where I think, you know, film in general and entertainment, for that matter, is really about retaining focus, retaining attention. We're in the business of trying to retain attention to influence like a consumer, right? And if you boil that down to it, as much as like, you know, the creative person in me is like, it hates that definition, but everything built on logic is like, that's kind of like it in general.
Yeah, you need to understand how the world works.
Yeah, exactly. And so there are so many factors that go into it. So in order for someone to sign off to give you money, or for you to just, so there's two things. So yeah, you can self-fund a project and you can retain all your creativity and put it out in the world, but realize that if you don't hit the buttons necessarily, you've got less of a shot for people either to organically not only find it, but organically retain attention on it. Now you can make it really compelling and it could be good and it could work out. It totally can. Every now and then there is, you know, something that gains a lot of momentum and attention just purely because of its own merit, and it's great. And those are very seldom. So the tried and true method is usually appealing to the factors that are resonating at the current time period with that for the audience and just the political situation at the time.
Yep. Other factors coming in, like maybe your film has a lot of violence. Maybe it's a bank robbery film. Maybe it's a movie with a bunch of guns in it. There's a shooting that happens. You don't want to release that film anytime soon because that's going to be in the conscious eye. I mean, you can, but it's definitely going to have some people like typing in online as like, why would you release this nowadays with all this shootings? Like, whether that's right or wrong, I'm not going to talk about. But all of that stuff, like you have to be conscious of the social situation around the world. And again, that just comes to the realism of the unfortunate truth with some films.
Yeah, the social climate is a huge thing and what kind of resonates socially at the time. And so on top of that, then if you go to the studios, you know, it also they're so scared of hurting shareholder value and doing anything that would go against an audience watching the film, because obviously they need to make money and they can only make money by retaining viewership and being able to sell products that they do either on commercials or product placement or whatever.
Yeah.
So they just need to retain that focus. And so they just can't have anything that would be within reason going against the grain or taking risk, you know, against the social climate. And so
it's stopping any creativity and halting it to a point where you're meeting the social climate and not going at all beyond that.
Right. Not testing it at all.
Nope.
Because any of that, because there's so much money on the line. And case in point, here's an example of this. I have a good friend who was actually a roommate of mine in Los Angeles. And great guy. Honestly, one of the funniest people I know. And he was in this show called Heathers. It was a kind of a TV series that was being launched when Paramount Network, the Paramount Plus, was launching the streaming service. And it was huge. They poured millions of dollars of marketing in the series, and he was on it. He was a series guest star, I believe, or a series regular. I think it was series guest star, and so he was a prominent role in it. And it was like his first big role or whatever it is. And a lot of the primary cast was their first kind of project that was in film. It was going to be their big debut thing, and like I said, just really well done. I got to see some things, and the series was actually kind of eventually released. But so they were about to release this. Like I said, Paramount was gearing up, and then all the school kind of bombing / shootings were going on.
Yeah,
started erupting, and they completely scrapped it. They just not scrapped it, but like they scrapped the amount of exposure they were giving it. They halted the release date for a while. They finally ended up releasing it. I think at first, and I might be butchering the factual things of how it was released, but I believe they first released it maybe outside the United States, and then like a few weeks later at a later date, they released it inside the United States, but without nearly as much exposure or marketing, so no one really got to see it, even though it was so well done. And it really could have been a huge social viral impactful thing on the level of like The Summer I Turned Pretty or the first launch of Stranger Things or something like
Yeah.
that. And it really could have been huge because it was so well done. But unfortunately, as we were saying, it's like, well, at the time, they couldn't take the risk that just wasn't a good time to release something that, if you know the story of Heathers, that the movie is Christian Slater in the original with Winona Ryder, Christian Slater's character tries to set off a bomb in the school, and so you haven't seen Heathers?
Nope.
Oh, okay. So if you haven't seen Heathers, that's really like the big thing.
That took a turn.
And so the series, kind of because it's following like a similar thing, although different characters and stuff like that, it is similar characters. It's kind of on that same kind of trajectory. And so because of that, they kind of halted it. But that is an example of like so much money, so much opportunity, so many people involved.
Stop because they needed to conform to that time.
Conform to the time, exactly.
It really is a shame that kind of conformity has stopped a lot of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it appears, and I kind of wish I had a woman here to talk about this, like Amber here to talk about. I would love to talk to her about this, but you'll do. Like, there's a certain way that I've kind of noticed that women have been getting written in movies as of recent. Like, it has to be like the quote unquote strong female lead. And as an example, I'll bring this out as an article.
I've heard about this too.
Yeah, an article that Emily Blunt has written as of recent.
It might have been that one that I've seen, but I've seen it on more than one occasion. So, like, as far as female actors like talk about this in general. So,
like, there's a very specific way that especially mainstream movies have been writing women, and it just feels like shallow and boring. And Emily Blunt Emily Blunt specifically got into this in her article. And again, for those who think this is sexist, it's not. Screw you. She specifically talked about how when she reads that in a script, she just rolls her eyes. Because immediately what that means for her character is she's going to be talking tough and saying tough things and pretending to be tough and exuding no other qualities other than I'm strong. Yeah. Why? Just 'cause. And that's it.
Yeah.
And it was written in that way to portray women in a very tough manner, as if women can't already be that. I remember when this was just starting to become a trend, where when I really like Kathleen Kennedy was like doing all this promotional meetings, like women can be action heroes too, and all my friends were like, "We know, we saw the original Star Wars. Did you see Princess Leia? She looks kind of awesome." Yeah. And like all of these people who were saying these things that I felt like were obvious in so many ways.
Yes.
And it's now gone to a point where you can't write a woman in a manner where she's struggling with anything or where she's being saved by anybody ever.
Yeah.
And she has to be this very stoic person, this very badass person all the time, every time. And it's such a boring character now. And it's so boring. I can't... And I read that article of Emily Blunt, and I was happy that someone in Hollywood was able to say that and finally say the obvious.
Yes.
Because I've been thinking that for so long. Like, these characters are boring. Like, Rey, Star Wars, she's boring. Like so many of the characters that they're writing in Marvel movies now. Captain Marvel, an incredibly boring character. And with not even that long ago, there were these great female characters. Like, even like recently, example, with the first Wonder Woman had a great female character, a great action hero that had struggles in and of herself. All these great heroes back then, freaking Kill Bill, Sigourney Weaver, and Aliens. All of these characters who were
badass.
She's awesome, and the girl in Halloween. What's her name?
Jamie Lee
Curtis.
Yeah,
that woman's awesome.
I can't remember her character, but yes.
Oh yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis, and like all of these women who are like incredibly great actors, and all of these people who are, I guess, trying to emulate them, but only writing their characters in the quote unquote strong portion, but forgetting to write the actual freaking character.
Like you said, I wish we kind of in this subject, because it is so touchy and like, granted, knowing who we are, I wish we did have the female actor's perspective or female producer or someone in entertainment here.
Yeah, Kelsey Amber, get on the podcast. I need to talk to y'all.
I would say that, from and forgive me if I'm remembering this wrong, but in one of the articles or the interviews that I saw was there is it's a frustration coming from these actors that when they're written, these actresses, that these characters are basically like it's a female like lead that is written to basically be acted like a male action star, rather than there is a unique strength in the femininity of a character that unfortunately right now is kind of they're having to conform to the way that the verboseness of how they're written right now is in such a way that it's kind of like it's female, but they're acting like the male in that role, rather than how in reality they feel that a female or that character would really act. And so it's very frustrating to them because they think it's one, as Emily Blunt would say, and from what I remember, it's very one note.
Yeah.
I'm going to posture and think this way, which in reality, I, as a female, wouldn't know any other female that would act like this.
No.
And that isn't my nature to do. And so I think that it's kind of, there's a falsity in it.
Yeah.
Rather than playing, there's a certain feminine strength that I would find fascinating to convey because I feel that that's very rare nowadays.
Yeah.
And so there's a frustration that occurs in that. And I think to a certain extent, audiences are starting to, and maybe this is my thinking, I think audiences are starting to recognize that. I think groupthink is a negative thing to anyone and everyone, always. I think you should always be intentionally weighing your thoughts and your beliefs consistently within yourself, so that you can always test yourself whether you're there's a flaw in your belief, because if you don't, then you can basically go in a way that is destructive to yourself and to people around you. And so
it's that back and forth, that person who's not going to agree with you talking to you, and you get that complete other side, like, okay, well, I believe this, why don't you believe in this? And you have a good back and forth conversation,
right?
Instead of just portraying this as the norm and not accepting anything else, and ignoring it. Like, if you don't agree with me, then you're not only just wrong, but you're wrong in a dangerous way. You shouldn't think like this is the way you should think.
The trend of how the female characters are written and speaking to the frustration of kind of what these articles, at least from what I saw, and granted this is just from my memory, so forgive me if I'm completely off base with how I remember the article going. But
no, that's fine. You're just gonna get canceled.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm getting at. Is I think there's the cancel culture thing. The fear of cancel culture is, I think it's all a derivative of groupthink instead of having rational discourse. Yes, I believe that there's a certain level which everyone would agree is a level that shouldn't be crossed. That is negative because it is destructive to everyone around them, and that thought shouldn't be necessarily perpetuated, right? And so, but the idea that someone should be struck down for thinking differently without having a rational discourse, because the only way you get people to change and illuminate the idiocy of how their thought process is to actually showcase it in a rational dialogue.
Exactly.
And I don't think, and right now that is not happening as much. So we get this trend to think a certain way or perpetuate a certain way because there is a huge fear that if you don't perpetuate that groupthink of thinking a different way, that you will be canceled on or ostracized by the greater community that is our society, and it's causing a divide between those that want to perpetuate that, or even really like different parts of the country regionally, I think, but it's really everywhere, just within different pockets. But it's causing a divide between this community and that community, when instead I think that all could be mitigated if we had rational discourse. But the reason we don't have rational discourse, and I think this is the darkness, isn't it, is I think at some level, and I'm not sure, but my hunch is that it's creating more monetizable markets with that divide. So if there's a divide, they can carve out something that they can sell that person to in some distilled way, And I'm not sure if that's the case, but it would
or
only
just marketing as well.
yeah, marketing. I mean,
You can market hatred.
exactly. And so, but there's that whole thing of whether it is right or not. On social media, you get a lot of the groupthink sadly is perpetuated, and maybe it's not the fault of the social media because it's all algorithmically based, and so it shows you more of what you've been looking at. But because that, it just reinforces what you're looking at instead of showing you everything. You basically, if you adhere to a certain set of principles that are different than these certain set of principles on this other side, then the principles that you adhere to are perpetuated to you again and again and again. And
you only hear that side.
You only hear that side, and so it basically conforms you to this one thought bubble. And it's something that we've seen continually throughout history, again and again and again. There always seems to be something, when there's I guess when there's a lack of other things to do or something like that, we always find things to be divisive within our communities.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's
because when you live in
nature.
America and you don't have you have a lot of first world problems, you tend to think of other problems to have for yourself.
Yeah, and going on that, the reason why I think it's monetizable in some way, and it doesn't have to be financially monetizable, although I guess it ends up that way, but it gives you, it's attention monetizable or fame monetizable in the sense that, like, if there's already a community thought out that thinks this one way, if you can perpetuate that, because they'll, and you act as like a pulpit or a platform that you're spouting out things that agree with that one side, all those people that agree to that one side will flock to you and your attention that you're giving out, or your information that you're giving out, and therefore raising you up attention-wise or celebrity-wise, I guess, in a way, or making you feel important, right? And as a base thing, all humans want to feel important, I think. And so, it's kind of perpetuating, I think, this more divide that way, and I think it's being accelerated because we have so many, the democratization of platforms that yield attention. I think that's perpetuating it.
It's happened for years, like that kind of groupthink mentality. I mean, you've seen it with the implementation of what films can be implemented in the Oscars now. You saw like many years, I think to be honest with you, I think the last great year in movies was like I don't know, I remember what specific the year this was, maybe like 2015, 16, I don't remember what this year was, but the year that Moon Knight, La La Land, Hell or High Water, Mad Max Fury Road, all of those objectively like big movies came out, and all of them were different. All of them had different structures, different ways of telling stories. One was in the modern Wild West. One was in a fictional fantasy La La Land version of Hollywood, and
1,000%.
Yeah, and as of recent, about like the limitations Hollywood has on certain Oscar movies. Now you have to fit this demographic. You have to have this in it, and it's not. And for many of us who don't see that as necessarily a bad thing in movies, but who don't want that as a restriction.
Yeah.
Oscars is now not a platform for the best movies, but for only these types of movies now.
Yeah. Yes. And so I want to say two things to that because I love where you're going with it. I want to say that like one thing is that groupthink is such a poison to creativity. And so when you think in terms of groupthink and your fear of being contrary to that groupthink, basically it just perpetuates predictability, and predictability is the absolute
death of creativity.
And creativity is that surprise, that endorphin setting, like spontaneity. That is the it's antithesis of that predictability.
Yeah.
So we want something that is unpredictable, and so it's just it kills it, and so it's not fun. And then so that's the one thing I'll say on that. But going back to what you're saying with the Oscars, in that only those movies, I think, but we've known that for a while. That it's sad to say that the Oscars is not necessarily, even though it's the Oscars, right? It's the biggest award show.
Jeez.
Yeah.
The Oscars didn't appreciate that.
Yeah, right. It's like the big, ho ha. But there's certain stipulations to be able to be even.
They knew it back then
Oscars.
that it was political. Like everyone knew. Like Billy Crystal was making fun of that on the Oscars. That the Oscars are political.
Ricky Gervais has done the same thing.
Freaking same thing. Yeah. Freaking Ricky Gervais.
He's great.
The past few years, the best host in the past few years, Ricky Gervais.
He just, especially the last time he did it, he just threw everything in their face, and he's like, I don't care.
And that rings so true because we don't want to hear the political. Like we don't want to hear your political speech. You can have your own opinions about anything you want. It's a free country. You can think whatever you want. But to impose those views the entire time when this is just supposed to be about your movie or the best movies in Hollywood, we don't care. Shut up. Get off. We want to talk about this.
I feel like everybody there, especially that is talking within reason, is hindered in such a way. I feel like they're, they all know that they're being watched. A lot of people are posturing, and it's the part of the thing. And because everybody knows that there's certain stipulations you have to meet to be even considered to be an Oscar, and you have to already be putting so much money. It's like you said, it's very political, and I feel like you've probably covered this in past podcasts, but it's like films have to be in theaters, and for I think it's a number of weeks, like 2 or 3 weeks, 10 weeks.
There's some weird, other than just there's some weird specifications you have to have to be considered for an Oscar
even an
movie.
Oscar, but just that stipulation, and I know it has to do with how many weeks you're in theaters. Just to be in theaters across the nation is an insane monumental task.
It is.
For any film. You have to have such a large budget and even such a larger marketing budget to do that. It's nuts. And so already you have to understand that it's such a select few of movies that are capable to be there, that you have to know that these might be the most exposed movies as far as in the from the layman's perspective, from the vast majority of the public. These are films that a lot of people know or have heard of.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they might be the best caliber movies that have come out that year.
No, it doesn't. And that's why I said the A24 movies, they're not indie movies because they do get a wide release in theaters. They do get...
But even those don't get as near of public recognition. I mean, they do to film lovers, right? But I know a lot of the public don't really know every single
This is true. They don't get... A24 has a specific model that they go after. They're the weird studio. They're like the weird middle child. Yeah.
The reason why I would say A24 is more avant-garde than, say, all those other studios is because it is not a public corporation and therefore isn't beholden to shareholders and can afford to take more risks because it's not having to appeal to their shareholder, the stock price constantly. You can think all these major studios, they're tied, even Legendary is now a public company. And so you get this corporatization. This is really this might be not right.
This is interesting.
But they have to appeal to, their shareholders, and their shareholders want to see very high viewership, and in order to get that high viewership, they can't really afford to take any risks because if the shareholder price is affected, all their stock price goes down, all this stuff. Whereas A24, they're not beholden to that, and they can take a lot more risk. And you see them greenlight a lot of projects, or even take projects that have been made and distribute them.
Yeah.
Midsommar, The Green Knight, these things that get widespread
Green Knight's
attention.
one of the best movies in the past few years. Fight me on this. Right. Someone fight me on this.
I still haven't seen it. I need to see it.
So good.
Gosh,
so good.
I can't wait to see it.
I don't know why it didn't get that much attention. Oscar season. It's so good.
But another one that I think should have gotten way more attention, especially in the Oscars, which I'm hoping this one will. I'm hoping, what I'm getting at is 8th Grade was a movie I thought resonated with a lot of people. It took a lot of risks, and it wasn't just the formulaic story, and I feel like it should have gotten more attention. And I don't know why it didn't, as far as even the Oscar buzz and the filmmaker buzz.
Yeah.
And in comparison, I feel like, and this is sad, this is going to make a lot of people mad, but what was the movie with Carey Mulligan that came out? Bo Burnham was in it.
Promising Young Woman.
Promising Young Woman. That's it.
Okay, yeah.
The Promising Young Woman. And so...
Keep talking. I'm going to look at this. I
don't know if you saw
I haven't seen this one.
I believe it got Oscar buzz. And that movie, in comparison to...
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So this movie, I thought that movie, Promising Young Woman, in comparison to 8th Grade, Eighth Grade, I felt like from a film lover's perspective was much more revolutionary. The Promising Young Woman. Promising Young Woman, I think, basically rode the coattails of like not to say this is bad, but I think the reason why it got a lot of acclaim that year instead of like other movies was simply because not saying it was bad in any way or whatever, but I just felt like there were other movies that were far superior, was because it rode the female empowerment movement that year and just seized that opportunity. You know, but and that happens. Movies can catch like different things, just like in general, things can catch different social waves and really get bigger.
When we were doing Porcelains, that was just becoming like the new thing, like the new feminist movement sort of thing. And we were like, because we had one of my friends, Kiani, who was in it, who's a fantastic actress, by the way. Kiani, we need to work together on another movie again. We were all joking around and like, well, we got a strong female lead, so we're gonna ride the coattails as far as we can.
Yeah, I mean, and that you would be foolish to say that things like that. We talked about this, but you know, catching the social climate waves of things that are going on at the time aren't impactful to, you know, funding a movie or getting a film made. I mean, it's huge. It's what producers talk about constantly. And writers are literally have to change scripts depending on stuff all the time.
Yep.
You know, main characters are changed, like basis of stories are changed. It's crazy just to coincide with what's going on.
Yeah, and again, like if you're a director with clout, like Quentin Tarantino talked about this on another Two Bears One Cave podcast, where if he's at a studio and he's pitching a movie and the producer's saying like, well, can we have this as a different race or can we have this as a female, like, and Quentin Tarantino will say, no, I wrote this for a black guy, I wrote this for a white guy, it's going to be this. But if you're someone else, like a newer filmmaker, like you're gonna have to like change these things. Like, can this take place in this? And the studio will have certain restrictions, and you kind of have to go along with those things.
Agreed.
It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to see like Quentin Tarantino talk about those things. A director with his caliber and his clout saying like, oh, screw you, I'm just gonna make the movie I want to. Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm rewatching a lot of his movies, and one of my favorite movies in the past few years that he's produced is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Great movie.
And it just doesn't seem any other filmmaker who shows that movie to a studio would just get rejected, denied every single chance, because that movie is not a generic Hollywood movie. It's got so many slow moments and like where the plot just is a standstill. There's barely a plot in the movie, arguably to say, and there's
people
kind
coming
of a
together
story.
Talking. You know?
Yeah, it's kind of a hangout movie, and it really isn't anything but that until kind of the ending when there's a little bit of plot that happens with Sharon Tate's story, played by Margot Robbie. All of it, you would get denied flat out, but because he's Quentin Tarantino and he's a proven identity, an icon of a filmmaker,
right?
He was just like, yeah, sure, why not? We'll do all the things. We'll do all the Quentin Tarantino things.
It's definitely up there for me as far as one of my favorites of his.
I watched that 7 times in theaters. I've never paid for a movie that many times in theaters. Like full freaking price, food and everything. It was so freaking worth it. I remember bringing my friend Ernesto to the theaters to watch that, and we were just like, in so many scenes, like, oh my gosh, it's such a fun movie to react with somebody with, because I feel like that's what you want as a filmmaker. You want the audience to react to your movie, and you know that scene at the very ending where all the stuff's happening and people are like, I'm going to try my best not to spoil it, but it's a Quentin Tarantino violence thing that happens at the end, and it's like, oh my gosh, and you get to see that, have that reaction with people next to you.
Yes.
And that's awesome for people who are filmmakers to like see that reaction from the audience, because as much as we like to say like, I don't care what people think, you 100% care what people think, and you want people to react positively or just react in some way to your product that you've put your heart and soul into. Like, what's the reaction? And like, if they freaked out, like, oh, that's a great reaction. To go back to it, like that kind of Quentin Tarantino has that clout. He can do those things, whereas a lot of other younger filmmakers will be subjected to those changes that the studio will have to implement. What age do you think we're in movies right now? I said this before. I think the last year that was a great movie was like, again, like with the year that La La Land, Hell or High Water, all of those like movies came out. Mad Max Fury Road. Mad Max Fury Road was nominated for Best Picture.
As a whole, I think Top Gun Maverick will probably be nominated for Best Picture.
Really? You think so?
Yeah, just because of, more and more the trend every single year out of, they expanded like the category to like 10. So there's usually always a couple movies that are just that purely make it in just because of the massive global box office success and cultural like wave of people going to see it. You know, you kind of see that every year.
Yeah.
So I think that just purely because of that, my guess is that it will probably make Best Picture.
I will compliment Top Gun Maverick for a second.
Yeah, please.
With a Marvel movie, I know exactly what I 100% agree with you. I know exactly what I'm getting.
Yes.
But outside of that, especially with the past few Marvel movies, that's all I get, and I leave the theater feeling like that was fun but forgetable.
Totally.
But with Top Gun Maverick, I was giddy laughing the entire time. I was like, I was so excited. Like this is maybe because of the execution of the movie was just so top notch from every single conceivable level. There's not a movie this year that has executed a movie with such precision and perfect. Like it's almost a perfect movie. I would like to say that Top Gun Maverick is like the perfect movie. There's not a single thing that I can really say I don't like about the movie, at least execution wise.
Yeah, but you're right. It is the rewatchability of that movie is like
up there.
High.
Yeah, I haven't been like...
I wouldn't be upset if it was on. Like, it was like, oh, you're watching that? Oh, cool. I'm going to sit down and watch it with you. You know
100%.
what I mean?
I'll watch it all the way through. Like, I can't... I mean, as a side note, I'm one of those guys. I cannot start a movie midway through. I have to be so engaged all the way through. I can't just watch it. Like, if I see The Polar Express, which is a Christmas movie that I love, and I watch it every single year, if it starts in the middle, if it's on TV, I cannot watch it. I have to turn it off because I have to start from the beginning and get emotionally invested into it.
Okay.
But going back to the other question, you can definitely tell like throughout the years we've had certain years where we had like this is such a great year for film. Like one year we had like Pulp Fiction, Forrest Gump, Shawshank Redemption, all in the same freaking year. Those are all bona fide classics. Amazing. And what kind of age do you think we are for movies, good or bad, and where do you think we go from here?
Honestly, I think we're not in. This is my perspective and just completely my opinion, and I'm gonna get probably hate or be wrong about it. Whatever, it's my opinion. I feel like we're in a. And I think several directors are fighting against it, and they're producing some incredible stuff, and I really enjoy seeing what they're doing. But the vast majority, in general, of what's being greenlit or what is given the exposure, rather, what is being backed by either Hollywood or investors so that it becomes very broad and widely seen, those are the stories that are being shown and executed on are probably some of the least impactful that we've seen in a while. You know what I mean? They're just not. It's not great. I mean, they're fun. A lot of things are visually stimulating, but it goes. We talked about this in the last podcast I did with you, where it's like you get this. Right now you have you have superhero movies or whatever that are executed with hundreds of millions of dollar budgets, and then you have really well done horror movies on the low end, and then this middle end, which used to make up the bulk of like movies that you would go see in the theater, because people aren't going to the theater. They're not really there. There's not a lot of movies like that. The volume of those movies, I think, are either being distributed on lesser channels that don't get wide exposure, or a lot of that money and funding and time is really going to TV streaming and stuff like that. And TV streaming, a lot of that, I think even a lot of those we do. I think some TV is even. It is definitely the age of TV, but as far as streaming goes, but I think even some of those streaming things. I don't think we get heavy hitters like we did a few years ago in streaming.
Not
either.
At all.
Because you remember like
House of Dragon aside. House of Dragon aside.
But it was years ago. It started with, Kevin Spacey did his thing. But I remember when House of Cards first came out, put Netflix on the map, and then we had like a storm of just incredibly like anything that was the new hour on Netflix or whatever was like, did you see this? Because it was so good. Like the renaissance that we had of creativity, risk taking, these and the money and the sheer effort and not effort, but the sheer unpredictability that was coming out.
Because there was a golden age in TV as well, and I kind of agree with you. Like that age of like when House of Cards was coming out, or like Game of Thrones in its heyday.
Yes.
Like all of those shows were like peak TV.
It was incredible TV.
Mm-hmm.
And not
Sopranos, Breaking Bad.
Yeah, Breaking Bad. Exactly. We had all of a sudden this boom of like, and now, unfortunately, and I don't know if it's because there's so many that are coming out, and the sheer volume of it, to a lesser degree, the quality is kind of going down, or what. But I think, by and large, we still get some heavy hitters now and again, but not to the same extent we did.
No.
And I just think that there's a weakness in the, I don't even want to say substance, but in this sheer just like
content spewing
that we're getting. We're getting, high quality content, and we're getting the most volume we've ever had.
Yeah,
and we're getting it on more volume. There's not a problem as to there's nothing to watch. There's just a problem as in there's so much to watch. It's
what
hard
do
to
you
decide.
watch?
Yeah, and then because of that volume, I don't know if that affects the output. The output as far as in quality.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I feel like it does. I mean, let me rant on Star Wars again for a second, because I never do that. I mean, something that's been funny that's happened as of recent was a show called Andor that's been released, and I'm not sure.
I haven't seen it. Is it good? Is it worth checking out?
Very much worth checking out. If you like Game of Thrones, kind of like that slower build-up of a show, rather than just the fast-paced action.
Is it better than Obi-Wan Kenobi? Because people told me that was terrible.
So much better. Okay, so to clarify, there have been a lot of TV shows that have been released by Disney as of recent, specifically on the Star Wars end. We've had Book of Boba Fett, we've had Obi-Wan Kenobi, we've had The Mandalorian, and we've had a bunch of other cartoon shows that have been released, like the Clone Wars and other stuff. And on the live action end, there hasn't been a show that has been like peak quality. Mandalorian's been good, but in my opinion, it has been a little bit mediocre, except for like a few specific episodes. Book of Boba Fett was god awful, and then freaking Obi-Wan Kenobi was just passable at best. And even then, the production quality was shockingly low, considering it's a Disney freaking output. And then you have this show that no one, I felt, had hype for. It's this side character in a movie, Rogue One. It was a prequel to the original Star Wars, Rogue One, that it stars Cassian Andor, someone that no one had interest in. And it's the best TV show, Star Wars-wise, they have produced.
Really?
Ever. Live action-wise.
I'm going to have to check it out, because I completely passed by it because I was continually let down by the previous other TV shows that like you spoke of, other than The Mandalorian. I was just like, man, this is not living up to the hype that I thought it would.
Dude, I think I would recommend this to you, because there are so many. Like, Stellan Skarsgård plays one of the most interesting Star Wars characters I've ever seen in my life. He's such an important character.
Dude, he is such a great character actor.
Such a great character actor. He's not in enough to where I just want to see him more.
Yeah.
But I would recommend this show to you. But it's funny because Disney has not been promoting this like they had the other ones, because the other ones have had Kenobi and Darth Vader. Those are two like humongous IPs. And even Boba Fett. Boba Fett is the IP, and even Mandalorian, who's technically a new character, has a small baby Yoda who is technically part of the biggest marketing. And even him, he's dressed like Boba Fett. It's a recognizable property. It takes place in the Star Wars universe. Andor is kind of its own thing in that it stars this character played by Diego Luna, who does a fantastic job in the show, who are all these new characters, and is executed in such an interesting and new way that makes Star Wars feel very tangible. But even in that end, the marketing has not been doing it solid, and even then, Disney Plus has not been doing a good job marketing this thing. It's not even like on their front page. It was never on their front page. It was like you'd have to find the Star Wars page and then go all the way down and then find it, which is weird for a new Star Wars show. So, like, all this to say, they have not been interested in producing the best quality show, because as of that, Andor is their best quality show. They're more interested in content, and that's kind of the same what you've been talking about: content.
So, I love that you brought this up. Now,
yeah.
Have you been following what's going on with Disney at all?
A little bit, like the Bob Iger's back as CEO.
Yes.
Bob Chapek has been fired,
Yes.
and they've been dropping stock wise as of recent, drastically. It's
okay. So Yes. So under Bob Iger, they had like, not record, but they had. I mean, they were just their numbers were fantastic as far as like what they were generating, all this stuff. Disney was on top of the world, all this stuff,
Yeah.
and so and then he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna retire. I'm gonna transition out." And this guy Bob Chapek or whatever, it came in and became CEO. And since he has been CEO, it has been nothing but like horrific, just output as far as numbers and like stock price and stuff like that.
Yeah.
To the point now where they've just basically called up Iger, I guess the board is, and immediately just fired Chepik or let him go, and then Iger's back. And now Iger is taking the reins to try to shift back to what hopefully Disney will be. And hopefully, the reason why I even bring this up is hopefully now this marks like a shift to what we grew up on, and the risk not necessarily all the risk taking, but like the greatness that we remember Disney to be. And because they're the owners of all this IP, and they continually, are known for creating amazing IP. I think hopefully they get back. Now I think that also they can be very, recently they've had movies that have just continually bombed, and unfortunately, or just not necessarily that the movies were bad. They just audience just didn't show up. Like I know recently they had the one that starred Jake Gyllenhaal. That was an animated film.
That one bombed horrendously.
Yeah, and then
Strange World, that was the one that
Strange
bombed.
World, yeah.
They've had another one that's came out recently that's also bombed. I can't quite remember what it was.
Yeah,
there was Solo bombed. That's for different reasons, but Solo bombed. A bunch of these other projects that they've been releasing have not been getting the same revenue.
Exactly, and
continually.
And then you have the show output, right? So they're even though they have all this IP, they're not capitalizing on it, and just going for volume rather than quality.
Yeah.
And so it's cheapening the brand, and I think hopefully Bob Iger understands that. Hopefully we get like a resurgence back to what it was, because that's what I'm hoping for.
I'd like to, but I'm also incredibly negative when it comes to those things.
Oh,
I don't
really?
know.
Yeah.
I don't think that, again, it's the same thing with like Kathleen Kennedy. I respect what she's done as a career because she's had an amazing career. You see the movies that she's produced, amazing career. She's produced one of my favorite movies of all time, Signs.
Oh, yeah. Dude, you brought this up to me before. I've got another friend that's his favorite movie. I've got to put you guys in touch, but keep going on. Yeah.
Yeah. I need to find another one who likes Signs just as much as I do. But I don't agree with the direction at all she's been taking with Star Wars. I think she's a trash president of Lucasfilm for that aspect. That's not to take away from her career. She's an amazing career.
I was about to say, shots fired, man. All right.
She's trash at Star Wars. I don't think that any Star Wars fan would say she's good. And the same thing with Bob Iger. He has a great career, but I don't agree with some of the things that he has been doing he's definitely part of that cookie cutter content
Formula
over
stuff.
Quality kinds of things. And whether one or the other is Bob Chapek or Bob Iger is more responsible than the other, I don't think that bringing him back is going to bring back the Renaissance. I think they're more interested in the business aspect than the quality side of things. And I wish that wasn't the case. I just wish it wasn't the case. I agree with you. Disney's famous for a reason. Disney's big for a reason, but definitely as of recent, they've only been interested in creating content that's marketable rather than good stories.
Right.
Welcome back from the break. We just got alcoholics.
Oh yeah.
And we got one more topic to talk about today. You're an actor, my dude.
Yeah.
You know a lot about acting.
I don't know about a lot, but yeah.
I know you've worked with many artists, many co-actors, so on and so forth. I guess to narrow this down, how can you spot bad acting, and what are pet peeves for you for that?
Okay, I'm going to answer the pet peeve first, because this is a big one.
Sweet.
There's a couple, but like I think... So... I'll say this, and it falls into the kind of the bigger one. I think lack of preparation is number one. So like when an actor does not do the homework, and that goes... It's more than just remembering your lines. That's bare minimum. You can't act unless you know your lines. Know your lines to the extent that you're not thinking about your lines. Not thinking about the line that's coming up next. Some actors can get away with it, very seldom, but no great actor gets away with it.
Yeah.
And so you have to know your lines. And so that preparation lends yourself to be present and acting moment to moment, to just be. And that's really what great acting is. It's just being, and it's living in the situation that is prompted by the text, by the script. And so, and existing in the relationship that is happening between you and the other person or persons that you're with. Nothing else matters. The camera doesn't matter. You don't. The crew doesn't matter around you. The audience, if you're on a play, doesn't matter. It's the bubble of existence that you are in at that present time with the other actors that you are existing with and being. And so the lack of preparation to be able to be present in that moment is infuriating, number one, as another actor trying to play with you, because you aren't present with me. If you're not prepared enough, it doesn't translate. And so this specifically, my biggest, going on from that lack of preparation, if you distill it down into a certain emotion that is really easy to spot for me, that is a lack of preparation and a lack of someone just going through it, it's the age-old one that even the layperson's like, oh, that's a guy's a great actor because you can see tears. It's not about being tears. It's like existing in that sadness. If tears come, great. If the script calls for it and the director makes you cry, it's up to you to internalize something to get you into that space. And it might take you a little bit of time, but eventually you need to be there, and it needs to be captured like that. I think a lot of times I can see, and there's factors that happen that kind of make obstacles so that it's harder to get there. Yeah. But a lot of times, when you see someone fake cry when it's not a genuine impulse, if they would just trust themselves to exist in that moment, it doesn't matter about the tears. It's you, it's them. It's the sign of like and sometimes it's, like I said, it's the director that's making you do it, right? But it's a sign, I think, of an inexperienced actor or an actor that is putting the pressure or trying to play an emotion rather than existing in that moment. If you understand what the character's going through and you just trust yourself to let the instinct take over of what that character is going through in that moment, and it's a sad moment, then either you produce tears or you exist in a space that will resonate with the audience to the point where tears don't even have to be shed, but the audience can feel that power and presence. I'll give you an example. You know the movie Warrior with Tom Hardy and Nick Nolte?
One of the movies that is one of the very few movies that has brought me to sobbing. You know what? Actually, that's the only movie that I've genuinely sobbed after, because it's a story about brotherhood.
Yes.
And I visualized me and my brother's relationship in that movie.
Yes.
And I straight up stopped the movie midway and halfway through the climax of the movie and just straight up bawled. That was this is one of my favorite movies.
Very powerful film. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But the example it just popped in my head is the Casino, when Tom Hardy is a short backstory is that Tom Hardy's character is estranged from his father. They come together basically so that his father can coach him in this fighting tournament. That's it. And so Tom Hardy is playing a slot machine in a casino, and Nick Nolte, who plays his father, is coming to talk to him. And Tom Hardy basically shuns him and throws coins in his face. And Nick Nolte, he doesn't cry, he doesn't do anything, but it is the most, in my head, one of the most powerful, full of pain and anguish moments that I have seen an actor present.
That's kind of why I believe why so many people hold Daniel Day-Lewis in such high freaking regard, because his great acting moments don't necessarily involve tears. The Oscars, when they nominate the best actor and they play the clip of something like kind of the reason why they got nominated for best actor.
Yes.
And usually it's a crying clip or it's like a heavy emotion clip, and it might not even be that actor's best performance.
Right.
But it's just the big moments. And especially Daniel Day-Lewis is held in such high regard. because of his subtler performances and the fact that he disappears into his character. And you can see that definitely in the movie Phantom Thread.
Yes.
I love that movie so much.
Yes.
But there's not a lot of like outburst. There's some outburst moments for sure, but there's not a lot of like big Oscar-worthy play the character moments at the festival. Who are like these tears coming out of her eyes and this big drama that's happening on the screen. He more or less becomes like you're talking about. He becomes the character and relaxes into it, and he's not trying to play an emotion. He's not trying to prove anything to anyone in that moment. Like, I can cry on camera. I can do this. He's becoming the character, and he's existing within the same space as the director requires, the story requires. And from what you've described, it makes sense why he is held in such high regard as one of the best actors working today, because of that.
What makes him great? Yes, he's relaxation, but the relaxation is also he's relaxed in a state that coincides with what the character's in. He's living in that state as he's relaxed and letting the surrounding stimuli that are perpetuated by the other actors or the scene itself or the actions within the scene fuel his reactions and his existence and his state of mind as that character. But he's able to exist relaxed as that character. Oh, bless you.
Sorry.
And so oftentimes the sad thing is it happens in practice when, like I said, when you're just by yourself alone and you have this great piece of text and it's a good piece of script and you're just working on it and you're trying to find it. You're exploring this character's mental state and mindset as you're working through the dialogue. And every single time, as you get more familiar with the text, as it becomes colder and colder embedded, as it gets so within you that a bomb could go off and you still could be saying it, you're finding new things every time, and those new enlightenments that you're seeing, how the character's feeling as you're saying it to the other person. And a lot of times, the other actor in the moment, because it's live, you're filming it or you're on stage or whatever it is, the other actor might be giving you things that you didn't see coming. And so you've already explored the mental state of the character, the situation. You know roughly the situation that your character's in and how your character has started feeling prior to this moment. And then when you're lobbed a pass that is the action of the other actor that's doing something that you didn't predict. Maybe he says a line with a different inflection. Maybe he picks up something and tosses it to you that wasn't in the script that he just feels he needs to, and it just all of a sudden you have to react to it. But that might fuel you with spontaneity to surprise yourself and just be in a different happenstance, but it might make you feel a different way spontaneity wise. And what I'm really getting at is when you're alone, or when I've been alone and I practiced amongst myself, or practice just going over lines and trying to explore that character, all of a sudden something clicks. And the magic is when you're living moment to moment, you can't replicate it. That's why every take on great actors is different. A lot of times you fail. You swing for the fences every time, but a lot of times you fail. But every now and then, or every take, there's something a little different about it, or something amazingly different about it. But they're all right. That's the thing. It's like sometimes you fail and it's crap. But maybe every 5 takes, you have 3 that are terrible, that are crap, and then 2 that they're vastly different. But they both are true. They both really are real. And that supreme presence and finding out something new with a character that's starting to manipulate your body or your mental state into exhibiting something that is indiscernible between falsehood and reality is, if you're following me, I mean, this is starting to get really heady or whatever. But yeah, that's such a high for me, man. I don't know. I hope that made sense to everybody watching, because I felt like I was going in circles, but I was trying to articulate it as best I can. But yeah.
I don't know what it's like to be an actor and have that kind of feeling acting against somebody else, being that type of character. But I think you articulated it for someone who's not familiar with that the best way possible. I love that answer.
Okay. I think it got really pretentious at some points, but yeah.
I guess I don't like. I mean, like when I'm shooting something in particular, you can definitely tell on my face because if you're watching me behind the scenes, you know when I have this shot. When you know when I have this shot, I'm literally like I'm making the dumbest faces possible when I have this shot. I mean, Nate even realized when we were doing a specific shot on what is it? The short film that we did with Nate recently. What is it? Not to be trifled with.
Oh yeah.
And
worms for a second. Yeah.
Quite a few. I mean, on Worms too. Like on all the short films, all these have one shot that is the shot. And I know when a shot is not as good as it could be because I'll go like, I'll have a facial reaction of like, it's okay, could be better. It's all right. But when I have the shot, my eyes will widen, my mouth will go like be on heroin. Like I'll go crazy for a second internally and be like, just like react something like that.
Oh yeah.
And then when the director or anyone says cut, I'll go, holy crap, we did it! Like that was the shot. And it kind of bums me out when the actor says, I think I could do better. Like, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It's like you could do better. I did my best. Why weren't you that kind of like when that kind of stuff happens. But like, I know when I have the shots, and maybe it's definitely not the same thing because you're living in someone else's peripheral, and I'm like just shooting something with the camera. But I can kind of see where you're coming from when you have the shot in the camera and you deliver the performance or the reaction you're hoping to get, or the emotion. Like
sometimes they don't line up right. Like it's such a collaborative experience that when you're making a movie, I mean, yeah, that's something, and that happens a lot. It's like you feel like you had it on that take, but something happens, whether it's plane or sound or the camera movement wasn't right, and so you have to do it again. It might have not been in your head as good as the previous take, but now the picture was awesome on that take. So it's like, shit, well, we got to move on, because it's like it is what it is. So it's such a collaborative thing. And you just have to trust that the end product accomplishes what the director wants.
Yep.
And so ultimately, as long as they're happy, then you have to, just go on at that point.
David Fincher said it very, very accurately when he said everyone on set has to peak at the same time. The boom operator, the cinematographer, the gaffer, the actor, everyone has to peak at the same time in order to create a shot. And that it's like take 1, take 2, take 3, take 4, take 5. Like it could take like several takes before we're on the same page. But we all know, everyone on set knows when you've just hit gold, when you've created magic, and you've seen that on set. When you see the retake and you see like what we just created is the bomb, and everyone knows it. It's such a cool feeling when there's that shared excitement on set. Like, holy crap, we're the best people. It's so cool.
Yes, absolutely.
With that. Excuse me, let me say that again. With that, without cracking my voice, because I turned to pubescent for a second.
No, you're good.
Thank you for coming on the podcast. We're gonna do a freaking cheers. Yeehaw. Cheers.
Dude.
Mine's gone. I'm an alcoholic. Help me. Thank you for coming on, Mark. Please come on more often because it's fun to talk to your face and your luscious hair.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it makes Steve jealous because he has none of that.
Well, Steve, I'm sorry, buddy.
Sorry, bud.
But yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. I can't wait to do it again.
Thank you for coming on. And whenever we have those 3 short films coming out, you'll get to see Mark's wonderful performance.
Oh, man. Okay.
As a comedic idiot.
Yeah, that's it. A few times I've done comedy.
Ernesto, my guy, let's roll those credits.